Welcome to Tom's True Crime. Today, we take you to Columbia, South Carolina. June 30th, 2011, 27-year-old Morgan Catton is reported missing. Born to parents Maria and Wayne, Morgan had two other sisters, Brenda and Linda, and she was the oldest. They were very close. Morgan had always been driven, and her dream was to become a lawyer. In the spring of 2008, she made the move from Alabama to Columbia, South Carolina to pursue this. Residents in Columbia say it is slow and relaxing, people are welcoming, friendly, and it's generally a quiet and peaceful place to live and study. Morgan liked her new home instantly. She was in a long-distance relationship with Stuart Montinsala, a corporate lawyer, and they had met at his law firm 4 years before. Even though she is 20 years younger than Stuart, they had so much in common, and Stuart said she was wise beyond her years. They clicked right away, shared the same work ethic, the same sense of humor, and they supported each other through some challenging personal and professional times. Stuart said she was outspoken, intelligent, and very sensible. Morgan even managed to charm his very protective older sister, something he found remarkable as nobody had managed to do that before. Stuart was planning on surprising Morgan with a special marriage proposal. He had already chosen the perfect spot. However, the vast distance between them since her move had made things hard, and they briefly broke up. Morgan had started seeing another student called Todd, but she quickly realized she still loved Stuart a lot and wanted to make it work. So she called things off with Todd. He was pretty upset, but they did remain good friends. In June 2011, Morgan had just graduated from law school. Stuart and her whole family was there to watch her graduate. The next big step was passing the South Carolina bar exam, and every spare second she had was going into studying. After graduation, she attended her sister Linda's wedding back in Alabama and told people after this she really needed to hunker down and focus on her bar exam. The family all knew it was the last time they would be together for a while, and this made Linda's big day even more special. Like many students after graduation, Morgan had chosen to stay in Columbia instead of going back to Alabama. She lived on the second floor of the Forest Lodge. Forest Lodge was a place built exclusively for law students, and it was situated directly across from the campus. Still being able to go in and talk to lecturers and use the library while she was studying for the bar. Back at her apartment, though, her safe and quiet space soon felt very different. Morgan had spoken to her sister about something that she could not prove and knew sounded strange but was convinced was happening. She could feel things were being moved around, like someone was coming into her apartment. When she got home after being out, there was a strange feeling she couldn't explain. She felt someone was watching her, but there had been no signs of forced entry, so she had no idea how this could be happening. This uneasy feeling she had not subsided, and on June 25th, 2011, late into the evening, she sent an email to Stuart about her concerns. Stuart told her not to worry and said it was probably just some kids messing about, but not actually intent on doing anything. Morgan sent an email to everyone to let them know that she will be studying hard and not to get offended if she doesn't respond to texts or emails. In the following days, no one heard anything from her. Apart from going to church and making time for the occasional workout, she was doing little else apart from studying. Her family and friends tried to check in on her once in a while. Phone calls and messages went unanswered. Initially, they were not alarmed because she did say she would be busy studying. But her best friend Natalie and her sister Linda had repeatedly tried to check in with her, but were being met with silence. Linda was on her honeymoon and sharing photos, and it was strange that she was not responding to any of them. It did not feel that she was just focusing on other things. It started to feel like something was wrong. Linda decided to call a fellow student of Morgan's and asked her to stop by Morgan's apartment and check in. The fellow student, Cynthia, tried calling Morgan before she went to the apartment. It went straight to voicemail. Cynthia and her boyfriend pulled up at her apartment and noted that Morgan's car was still parked outside. Using a spare key, they let themselves in. Morgan was not there. Her belongings were there, but not packed. She was supposed to move out and move in with Stuart the next day, June 30th. Then they found Morgan's purse, law books, cell phone, and laptop. She would not go anywhere without her purse and cell phone. So where was she? Cynthia called some friends and people she knew lived in the same complex. Even Morgan's ex Todd started searching the university, and everyone else was looking nearby. The consensus was the last time anyone had heard anything from her was at an end-of-year party 4 days ago. But she had left the morning after, and everything was fine. And a few hours later, she had emailed Stuart talking about her worries being in the apartment. The following morning, with still no clue where Morgan was, Linda decided to call the police. And her family set off on the long drive to South Carolina to help. At 9 a.m., officers got to Morgan's apartment. Right away, they noted that there were no signs of a forced entry, no signs of a struggle, and nothing seemed to have been stolen. But something was definitely wrong. They started combing through her rooms, and one of the first things they did was use luminol to see if there were any traces of blood. Everything was coming up clean. But when they used it in Morgan's bathroom, the result was very different. Her bath had clearly been full of blood. Police believed they were now looking for Morgan's body. June 30th was a hot day, and as they moved their search outside to form a new plan, a big gust of wind came along which forced a smell in their direction. They were standing near some bins, and a distinctive odor stopped them in their tracks. It was undoubtedly the smell of human decomposition. One officer said that the smell of a decomposing body is one of the worst things you will smell. Police opened the lids and made a grisly discovery that would stick with them forever. It was a female torso wrapped in a black bag. Testing needed to be done, but given the fact Morgan was missing and the luminol results from her bathroom, they strongly suspect that it was a part of her body. Who could have done this? In a twist of fate, the police cars being parked near the entrance had blocked the trash removal truck from getting in to empty them. If the police had not been there right at that time blocking access, everything would have gone. They would have lost vital evidence. As suspected, testing confirmed that it was Morgan Catton torso. The chief medical examiner said there were no signs of sexual assault but could not confirm a cause of death. They did believe she had been killed and dismembered on June 26th. Morgan's apartment, especially the bathroom, was now being dusted for fingerprints, but it looked like there had been a pretty thorough cleanup done, and only luminol was picking anything up. They had cordoned off everything outside and were trying to keep what they had found under wraps. If it was someone in the complex, they didn't want to alert them to the fact that they had just found her, in case this caused anyone to run or destroy more evidence. One officer said, "You have to look at who is closest to the victim, either romantically or geographically." The people involved in the initial search, Cynthia, Todd, and the others, were all asked to provide statements. They also spoke with her partner Stuart, but he was not only devastated, he had been away on a golfing trip in Florida, and his alibi checked out. It was obvious that he was not involved. Morgan's ex, Todd, was much the same, and was quickly ruled out. The authorities were keen to search every home in the block so they could start eliminating people. Everybody was happy to do this. Everybody apart from one person, 25-year-old Nathan Jafari. So why would this be an issue, they wondered. Nathan Jafari said he has studied law, and he does not like his personal space invaded. He was a law student also prepping for the bar exam, and had been living next door to Morgan since the first year of law school. He had been there in the initial searches for Morgan, walking around, and someone police had asked to come to the station a few hours before. He was also talking to the media. He told reporters that he last saw Morgan last week or the week before that. He said he did not know where Morgan was. Police continued to search the rest of the block but kept their eye on him. His behavior was looking odd to them. He was both refusing to help with anything but at the same time hanging around and making sure he was involved with everything. Nathan stayed there all day watching everything and what everyone was doing. He was following the police around as they were going in and out of other people's homes. He was one of the first people to talk to the media and gave his theories about what could have happened to Morgan. He said, "Morgan was my neighbor. We're just trying to find out where she is. No one has seen her since Saturday. I haven't seen anything. She's very nice, personable, very much a people person. Maybe she went out running and someone snatched her. There was no sign that anyone broke in. The door was locked when everyone got here." The reporter then asked Nathan about the body the police had recovered. "Body? Had you heard? We don't know if this is the same person. You know what I mean. They took out a body earlier. That's why we're trying to ask people if they know who lived there." At that point, Nathan looked like he was about to pass out. The reporter had asked him if he was okay. Nathan stopped talking to the reporters and sat down on the ground holding his stomach. Only a few people knew about what they had found in the bin, and after the interview was over, Nathan sat for a long time just staring into space. Todd got onto Morgan's computer to see if she had sent anything. She sent an email out to some people. There was an email that she sent to a friend of hers. She said she was afraid in her apartment, that she thought someone had tried to break in on Thursday night, and she was afraid to stay in there. A few hours later, Nathan finally let the police into his apartment. He was stockpiling food, energy drinks, and lots of various weapons. They looked through the drawers and found a variety of things, including some condoms. When police pulled him out, Nathan mumbled something about being a virgin and saving himself for marriage. Nathan started talking to them about being on the dating site eHarmony, but said he wasn't having much luck with getting dates. He was acting strangely. When police asked why he had the condoms, he muttered something about breaking into 2 neighboring apartments and randomly deciding to steal them. With his own admission that he had been breaking into other people's homes just feet away from where Morgan had lived, police arrested him for burglary and took him to the station for further questioning. Columbia police say a K-9 unit has volunteered to help in the search for the remains of murdered grad Morgan Catton. Columbia police are following several leads in the case, but so far have no official suspects. Catton's neighbor, 25-year-old Nathan Jafari, was put in jail on burglary charges. Police continue to gather statements from students and neighbors. Although he had been keen to talk to the media and know everything that was going on, Nathan was now totally silent. When police asked him questions, he said, "I don't know." He denies hurting Morgan Catton. Police continue to find Nathan's behavior strange. He sat almost perfectly still the whole time. Even when detectives left the room, he remained in the same position, staring straight ahead. The police were quite certain that Nathan is the person who has murdered and dismembered Morgan Catton. Nathan had 2 scratches just above his hip. As the interview progressed, Nathan's apartment was being turned upside down. Investigators found that he had a master key to get into every room in the complex. They found the packaging for a hacksaw and several flash drives, which later turned out to have graphic and disturbing images and videos of children on them, and a pair of underwear that, once tested, came back to Morgan Catton. A look into his search history showed he was often on her social media profiles, and he would be searching these at the same time he was watching violent pornography. They found he had written blogs about torturing and killing women, sharing his depraved fantasies on forums. It was all very disturbing. And given the amount of searches he had made for Morgan's name, he was clearly obsessed with her, and one of his last and latest searches was for Columbia's trash collection times. Nathan continues to deny his involvement. He said, "I didn't do anything." When police did a background check on Nathan, they found that he used to work at the DA's office. They considered him a good guy. He used to help police out. In the maintenance room in the apartment complex, they found a hacksaw that matched the packaging found in Nathan's apartment. There was blood on it. CCTV had confirmed it was him buying the hacksaw. They also found a bloody bed sheet. The blood was a match to Morgan. The maintenance worker had already been ruled out, and the only other person that had a key to get into this room was Nathan. This was Morgan's killer, but who was Nathan Jafari, and why had he done this? Classmates of Nathan said he was uncomfortable to be around, very awkward and difficult to talk to. He would ask people bizarre things about death, fixating on a zombie apocalypse, and committing the perfect murder. He would quiz people on how they would, hypothetically, kill someone covered up so they can get away with it. In school, Nathan was voted most likely to be famous. His fellow law students said he definitely thought he was the smartest person in the room, smarter than everyone, very arrogant, always ready for a debate, even if he was totally wrong. He would bicker with everyone, Morgan included, and other students said he was quite happy to disagree and argue. They, along with their teachers, said he was an average student. He wasn't someone outstanding in any way, but he sure spoke like he was. Now he was finally coming to the end of his time at university, and he was unsure as to where to go next. He was finishing school with no friends and no future plans. He was somewhat lost. From the minute they started living next door in 2008, Morgan had really tried hard to be his friend and be supportive. She even stopped to introduce him to her mother Maria when they saw he was hurriedly walking alone around the complex. Maria met him again on the eve of their graduation. There was something about him, she said. After she spoke to him for the second time, she couldn't help but think of him living next to Morgan. "I thought it was odd that he always kept the windows and curtains closed. You never saw him," she said. But as nice as Morgan was trying to be, he had the same effect on her that he did on most people. He just made her feel uncomfortable. In an email that Morgan wrote to Stewart in 2008, the same year she moved in, she spoke about Nathan's behavior and wrote about butting heads with him in class. She said, "Got the stink, guy. He's out to get me." But Nathan had definitely taken a shine to Morgan and had asked her to go out on a date a few times. But as well as being in a relationship, she just wasn't interested in him like that. From this point on, she was only being polite if she saw him, but was definitely keeping her distance. With everything they had found, on August 2, 2011, Nathan Jafari was charged with the murder of Morgan Catton. He was also later charged with 7 counts of child sexual exploitation. Despite his lawyers requesting his bail be set at $100,000, it was set at almost $1 million. A grand jury indicted him on 1 count of murder, and once all of his devices had finally been analyzed, 30 counts of child exploitation. The case building against Nathan Jafari and the murder of his neighbor Morgan Catton is getting stronger. The grand jury announced there's enough evidence to let this case go to trial. 1 count of murder and 30 counts of sexual exploitation of children. Those are the heavy charges stacked against Jafari, who has been in jail since July 1st on unrelated burglary charges. This indictment, as evidence shown, leads the grand jury to believe Nathan Jafari did kill, murder, and cause the death of Morgan Catton, a human being, by inflicting bodily harm in a manner unknown to the grand jury at this time, including decapitation of said victim. Since the grand jury has decided there is enough probable cause in this case, the next step is arraignment. That's when Jafari will enter his plea, and according to his attorney Peter Lenko, it will be not guilty. Although everything against him was really strong, the prosecution did note that it was still a largely circumstantial case. Apart from the underwear, there was nothing tying his DNA to her. Nothing of his was found in the bathroom, and none of his DNA was on the hacksaw. In terms of the underwear, he could explain it away as something he stole, just as he had done with the condoms. They still could not prove a cause or time of death. Nonetheless, prosecutors were confident and ready to take him to trial. More evidence would soon be brought to their attention, which cemented everything, and it was chilling to watch. On a memory card taken from his apartment, they found a video which proved that Nathan had been stalking Morgan for quite some time. Her feelings and worries about someone watching her and breaking in were valid. On the same night Morgan was murdered, he had been filming her home through the window. He had taken a wooden pole, which he had duct-taped a camera to the end of, and then held the pole up to be able to see into her rooms through her blinds. Prosecutor Stuart Cook said the second he saw this, he said, "That's the guy." A few days later, hundreds of people filled the church for Morgan's funeral. Despite the best efforts of everyone, it was still only her torso that had been recovered, so that was all they could bury that day. The district attorney's office decided to seek the death penalty against Nathan Jafari. Nathan Jafari pleaded not guilty, and the defense were preparing to position the idea that the police were framing him and had entered his apartment many times to plant evidence. In another twist, one of Nathan's defense attorneys who briefly worked with him had actually been one of Morgan's teachers in a transitionary course from law school into law practice. He said he had admired Morgan and enjoyed teaching her, but one thing he did remember was that she was opposed to the death penalty. So, knowing that the prosecutors were already pushing for this, he was pushing to throw it out. As everybody prepared for what would be a very tough trial, the prosecution agreed to drop the child sexual exploitation charges and offered him a plea deal. And this meant Nathan had a change of mind. In April 2014, just a week before the trial was due to start, Nathan Jafari pleaded guilty to killing and dismembering Morgan. For nearly 3 years, 2 important unanswered questions hung over the death of Morgan Catton. What happened the night she died, and what happened to the rest of her body, since only her torso was found after the murder? Nathan Jafari finally provided answers to those questions in chilling detail. As part of his plea deal with prosecutors, Jafari agreed to write an allocution, a document detailing what he did and how. The day Nathan Jafari entered a guilty plea to the murder of Morgan Catton, his guilty plea provides finality to this case and assures justice that cannot be undone. Because of this guilty plea, Nathan Jafari will never again be able to deny that he is responsible for Morgan Catton's death. One of his old attorneys said the case took a turn for the worse for Jafari when the computer evidence started coming out, and it just kept coming. They were continuing to find more and more evidence related to his computer and camera. And finally, he agreed that was enough to get a conviction. Before he was set to be sentenced, the prosecution presented the evidence which attested to his character. They showed the recording of Morgan's home and read out some of Nathan's alleged forum posts, one of which read, "Graduate from law school. Party hard by drinking alone in front of my computer. See my sexy neighbor classmate come home late. Invite her up for a nightcap. Make her a special drink called a Mickey Fin. A drink designed to knock someone unconscious. She is out cold. I finally lose my V-card. Oh no, she has overdosed and died. I barbecued her legs and arms to celebrate losing my V-card. Not into organ meat, but threw her torso out. Lose it on TV while the cops are discovering her remains. You mad virgins. However, the legitimacy of this came into dispute, as some people claimed it was someone trolling online. And although the prosecution firmly believe it was him, it is up for debate. As part of his plea deal, he had to admit to the court what he had done. This was what he said happened. At around 4:30 a.m., he unlocked her door using the master key. He was wearing all black with gloves and a mask. He said he stood watching her sleep, but she must have felt something was wrong as she woke up suddenly. Before she could get out of bed, he leapt onto her and put his hands around her throat. The pair struggled and fell onto the floor. He said Morgan grabbed his mask and pulled it off, and when she realized it was him, she called his name and screamed at him to stop. She cried and tried to fight him off for almost 15 minutes as he was strangling her until she stopped breathing. He dragged her into the bathroom and put her into the tub. He left her there for the rest of the night. On the evening of June 27th, he returned with some tools including a hacksaw and proceeded to dismember her, which he described in graphic detail. He put parts of her into different bags, which he said he dumped in bins around the university campus. He put her torso into the bin next to the apartment block, thinking it would be taken shortly. He cut up his mask, gloves, and shirt and flushed them down the toilet. The medical examiner had revealed there were no signs of a sexual assault, and Nathan said he had not sexually assaulted Morgan. Even though it had now been almost 3 years, people still couldn't believe it. He claimed from that night on he was in a dreamlike delusional state and had convinced himself that Morgan was still alive. He said it's difficult for him to explain why he killed Morgan and attempted to conceal the murder the way he did. He knew it was wrong. I am not delusional or without all morals or decency. Something in my makeup, my psychology, my neuropathy, my own particular pathology perhaps must explain it. He told the family he was sorry and grieves for Morgan every day, but doesn't expect forgiveness from them. There is no way I can ever deserve it. If I could take back what happened, I would, he said. The only reason the prosecution did not end up seeking the death penalty was because Morgan herself was so against it. Her family respected that and said they hoped he lived a long life in the worst way possible in prison. Nathan Jafari was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole until 2041. After he was sentenced, he wrote a lengthy letter from prison claiming he had been the victim of police intimidation and his case from the start had been unfair. He said his guilty plea should be thrown out. In a neatly handwritten 2-page document filled with small lettering, Nathan Jafari outlines his experiences with police. He complains that police yelled at him and intimidated him in an interrogation room for hours during the early stages of the investigation and would not even let him go to the restroom without permission. Jafari details being so upset he suffered a seizure and required medical help, but was told that the EMT would only look at him if he allows police to search his apartment. He says even after they got into his apartment, police never gave him medical care. He demanded a new and fair trial. So 4 years later, he filed an appeal where he represented himself and called more than 10 people to be interviewed, including his old lawyer, whom he was seeking damages against. Things really didn't pick up until later in the afternoon as Jafari began questioning his former attorney Peter Lenko, and Jafari decided to waive his attorney-client privilege, meaning that Lenko had the ability to speak freely regarding his discussions with Nathan Jafari. His lawyer said, "Up until the last couple weeks of your case, I was strongly in your corner, until the searches on the internet, the fact that you had done searches about having sex with dead people, combined with a heavy evidentiary problem in your case. On top of that, you possess the most horrific child pornographic photos I have ever seen." Nathan Jafari claims that his defense team failed to represent him effectively. In his complaint, Nathan asked the court to award damages from his lawyer in the amount of $50,000 for legal fees and another $250,000 in punitive damages for his lawyer's alleged negligence. He also filed a motion against the judge claiming he had shown prejudice towards him. This appeal was denied. In 2022, Nathan, 37 years old at that time, filed another appeal in which he claimed that the prosecution had stolen documents, his constitutional rights had been violated, and his lawyers were incompetent. He was requesting his conviction be overturned, he be released from prison. Nathan's dad George stood behind this and said, "We are hoping that the truth comes out." But the judge said he could not even consider this appeal as it was filed over a year late, and this was also denied. The judge said, had Nathan Jafari exercised reasonable diligence rather than blindly assuming the South Carolina Supreme Court was to blame, he would have realized that his motion was untimely. Nathan has already filed another appeal, and this is still ongoing. Some of Nathan's family and friends still believe he is innocent, and his dad even started a GoFundMe to help with his legal fees, but it raised nothing, and the page was quickly removed. His mother Elizabeth defended him as well and believed he is innocent. She said, "I have a big hug for him when he gets out, and he has one for me." She also said she has visions of him becoming a Supreme Court justice one day. As far as the police, prosecutors, and Morgan's family were concerned, the trial was over, and the correct decision had been made all those years ago. Detectives believe they stopped a serial killer in the making, a predator, and a danger to children. Once voted most likely to become famous when he was younger, he is now infamous in one of the most shocking crimes the community had ever seen. The police praised Morgan's family and friends for being so quick, and they acknowledged that, if the trash collection services had emptied the bin where her torso was located, the case may have gone cold, and they might have never caught Nathan. Investigators also believe that Nathan has never been entirely truthful about what happened, and there is more to the story. They believe there are things he will never tell anyone. They continue to search for Morgan's remains, believing they might even be in a 60-acre area owned by one of Nathan's family members. Although he is eligible for parole in 2041, legal experts think he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Morgan's family celebrate every milestone and every event she should have been there for, as if she is there and joining in. They also organize runs in her memory every year. Her sister Linda named her baby girl Morgan Rose after her. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tom's True Crime. If you are interested in more in-depth investigations into the most perplexing crimes, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. What are your thoughts about this case? Please share them with us in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe.